Welcome back, my weirdlings. We have stepped into quarter 3 of Raven's Lorecast, the season of stewardship. If quarter 1 was about remembering where we came from, and quarter 2 was about crossing thresholds into becoming, quarter 3 is about responsibility, about what happens after the awakening, about tending what we've built, holding what we've learned, choosing who we become when no one is watching. This is the season of sovereignty, of discernment, of craft, of devotion. Not because perfection is required, but because power means something different once we understand its consequences. So wherever you're listening from, kitchen, car, porch, workplace, walking trail, or beneath the stars, I'm glad you're here, because this quarter, we are not chasing transformation. We are learning how to carry it. All right, my weirdlings, let's begin. Tonight, I light one candle. Not to call something in, not to summon, not to command, just to acknowledge what is already here. High summer, warm soil, air that hums with insects and memory. The sun has traveled 93 million miles to reach this field of light. It has done so without fail, without applause, without negotiation. We stand beneath that constancy and we listen. This episode is not instruction. It is not reenactment. It is not spectacle. It is listening. Listening toward the Great Plains, wide land beneath infinite sky, where nations have gathered for generations beyond written memory to dance for the sun. Lakota, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Crow, Blackfoot, Plains Cree, Shoshone, and many others whose names deserve to be spoken carefully, each with their own language, their own songs, their own ceremonial law, each raising a sacred tree, each stepping into a circle, each saying with body and breath, "We are still here." For more than a century, those steps were outlawed. The language of gratitude was declared illegal. The rhythm of devotion was driven into shadow, and still they danced. Not because it was permitted, because it was necessary. So tonight, we begin not with power, but with humility, not with conquest, but with reverence. We do not borrow what is not ours. We honor endurance, we honor sovereignty, we honor survival, and we ask a quieter question. What does devotion look like in our own lives? What will we give so the circle keeps turning? Take a breath. Inhale summer, exhale winter's residue. Let your chest rise and fall like prairie grass in wind. Whisper thanks to the sun, to the earth, to the peoples who kept the dance alive. May the words that follow be steady enough to deserve their company. To understand devotion, we begin where the dance has never stopped. Welcome to the summer dance. The earth remembers the steps. Before you picture the sun dance, clear your mind of every film scene you've ever seen. No Hollywood slow motion, no romanticized suffering, no eagle feathers reduced to costume. This is not spectacle. This is renewal. This is a people standing in a circle beneath an enormous sky and saying with their bodies, We are still here. The Great Plains stretch across the center of what is now called North America. Grasslands, wide enough to swallow horizon, wind so constant it feels like breath moving through the earth itself. Stand there for a moment. No trees to hide behind, no mountains to cradle you, just sky, vast and unblinking. It is a landscape that demands humility, and for generations beyond written record, the nations of these plains gathered beneath that sky for ceremony. Lakota, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Crow, Blackfoot, Plains Cree, Shoshone, and many others, each with their own languages, songs, teachings, and forms of the ceremony. There is no single sun dance. There are many. Each nation carries its own cosmology, its own songs, its own protocols passed through family lines. And at the heart of each is something simple and astonishing: gratitude for the sun, renewal of the world. The ceremony usually unfolds over 4 days, sometimes longer. Preparation begins long before the first drumbeat. Fasting, prayer, cleansing, intention. This is not something stumbled into casually. It is undertaken with gravity. One of the first acts is the selection of the sacred tree, often a cottonwood. The cottonwood is chosen not for convenience, but for meaning. It grows near water, its trunk is straight, its roots are deep, and it's a living axis, a bridge between earth and sky. The tree is not harvested, it is prayed over. Tobacco is offered, songs are sung, permission is asked. When it is cut, it is done with reverence and carried in procession into the camp. Families gather. Children run between skirts and leggings. Elders speak quietly. The tree is raised at the center of the ceremonial arbor. When it stands upright, the world has a spine again. Around it, a circular structure is built, open to the sky. This circle is not decorative. It is cosmology made visible. The sacred tree becomes the axis mundi, the world's center. Roots below, branches above, life between. Everything that happens next radiates from that center. The dancing begins. Dancers move in rhythm with the drum, heartbeat steady and unrelenting. They do not dance for applause. They dance as offering. Each dancer has made a vow. Some fast from food and water for the duration of the ceremony. Some commit to physical endurance. In certain traditions, some offer flesh, not as spectacle, not as self-punishment, but as sacrificial prayer. Pain is not the point. Communion is. To willingly endure discomfort is to acknowledge the shared suffering of the world. It is empathy embodied. When a dancer offers their strength, their sweat, their hunger, they are saying, I will carry something so the world may continue. They dance for those who are ill, for those who mourn, for those not yet born, for the buffalo, for the land, and for the sun itself. This is not transactional spirituality. It is reciprocity. The sun gives light. The people give devotion. The balance holds. But the sun dance is not only spiritual, it is communal. The Plains nations were not sedentary in the way Europeans expected. Bands moved with seasons, with buffalo herds, with survival needs. The Sundance was a time when dispersed communities gathered. Trade occurred, marriages were arranged, conflicts were reconciled, stories were exchanged. Children met cousins they had not seen since last summer. It renewed the social fabric. It was ecological, political, familial, and spiritual all at once, which made it threatening. To colonizing governments, ceremonies like the Sundance represented autonomy. Unregulated gathering, uncontrolled leadership, spiritual authority outside Christian doctrine. In the late 19th century, the United States and Canadian governments outlawed it. They labeled it barbaric, savage, backward. The Bureau of Indian Affairs enforced bans. Spiritual leaders were arrested. Gatherings were broken up. In boarding schools, children were beaten for speaking their languages. Haircut, names changed, songs forbidden. The intention was not simply religious conversion, it was a cultural erasure. And yet, the dance did not disappear. It went underground. Ceremonies were disguised as harvest festivals. Songs were whispered instead of shouted. Teachings passed quietly from elder to child. The flame did not go out. It burned low, but it burned. For nearly a century, legal prohibition tried to sever a people from their sacred rhythm. Only in 1978 did the United States pass the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. The wording itself is heavy with irony. Freedom granted, as though it had ever been theirs to give. But legislation did not create the Sundance. Survival did. The ceremony endured because people refused to forget the steps. That is the lesson here. Continuance. Not perfection, not spectacle, continuance. The Sundance remains alive today, guided by elders, protected by community, carried with the same reverence that carried it through prohibition. Many aspects remain private and should remain private. Curiosity does not equal entitlement. For those of us outside those communities, reverence looks like this. We listen, we correct misinformation, we support Indigenous sovereignty, we honor land acknowledgments with action, we do not replicate sacred rites. We understand that some doors are not ours to enter, and still we can learn something. Not how to perform the ceremony, but how to understand devotion. Modern spiritual culture often revolves around manifestation. What can I call in? What can I attract? What can I receive? The Sundance asks a different question. What will you offer? What are you willing to give so the circle keeps turning? This is not martyrdom. It is maintenance. The seasons turn because the earth remains in motion. Communities endure because people show up. Devotion is repetition. Not a dramatic gesture once in a lifetime, but steady presence year after year. The plains wind does not stop because colonization occurred. The sun does not withdraw because a ceremony was banned. The dance continues, and in that continuity is power. Not explosive power, sustained power, the kind that outlasts empires. Stand again in that wide field. Imagine the circle, the sacred tree at the center. Drums steady, feet moving in rhythm, children watching, elders remembering, the sun overhead. Now imagine soldiers arriving, orders shouted, ceremony declared illegal, drums silenced. Then imagine the following year a smaller circle, more cautious, still dancing. That is endurance. That is faith. Faith is not belief. Faith is repetition under pressure. The sun dance is not a relic of the past. It is a living, breathing ceremony, and it teaches something essential. The world continues because someone keeps showing up for it. This is not my story to own. It is not yours to appropriate, but it is ours to respect. And in respecting it, we might remember something we have forgotten. Gratitude is not passive. It is physical. It is rhythmic. It is willing to sweat. The sun rises. They still dance. And somewhere in that circle, the earth remembers the steps. And tonight, under this particular sky, the earth continues that rhythm. Step outside with me, not into a metaphorical sky, into the real one, my bright ones. It's July 5th, 2026. High summer in the northern hemisphere. The air is thick. The soil is warm long after sunset. The light lingers like it doesn't want to leave. Look up. The sun is still traveling through Cancer, the sign of home, memory, lineage, and the protective instinct that rises when something sacred is threatened. Cancer is not loud fire energy. It is not conquest. It is the hearth. It is the hands that keep the flame alive when the wind howls. And that feels important tonight because this episode is about continuity, about endurance, about devotion maintained across generations. Cancer understands that. Cancer asks, what do you protect? Who do you keep warm? What history do you carry in your bones? And this year, in early July, Mercury is retrograde in Cancer. Now, before anyone groans, let's speak clearly about what that actually means. Mercury retrograde is not cosmic sabotage. It is review, reconsideration, revising unfinished conversations. And in Cancer, it asks us to revisit ancestral memory, not to romanticize it, not to weaponize it, but to repair it. Under Mercury retrograde in Cancer, stories rise. Family stories, cultural stories, national stories. Some of them ache. Some of them were interrupted. Some were outlawed. This sky says, go back and listen carefully, which feels appropriate. Now turn your eyes to the moon. Tonight she is waning, a waning gibbous moon, still luminous, about 3/4 illuminated, but beginning her slow descent toward the third quarter. This is not the dramatic full moon moment. This is the gratitude phase. The waning gibbous asks, what have you received? What have you learned? What can you now give back? The light is still strong. But it is no longer building. It is softening. It is distributing. And in 2026, on this night, the moon is in Pisces. Pisces is the dissolver. It erases hard edges between self and other. Under a Pisces moon, it becomes harder to pretend that we are separate from what we harm, and easier to feel the pulse of the collective. Pisces is empathy without borders. It is the tide that reminds the shore it does not exist alone. So we have Sun in Cancer protecting the lineage, Mercury retrograde in Cancer, revisit the story, Moon in Pisces, dissolve the illusion of separation, and the waning gibbous phase, offer gratitude back. That is not chaotic energy. That is devotional energy. That is maintenance energy. And maintenance is holy. Now let's widen the sky. 2 days before this episode drops, Mars and Uranus stood in conjunction in Gemini. Mars is action. Uranus is disruption. Gemini governs voice, language, communication, narrative. When Mars and Uranus meet, sparks fly. There can be breakthroughs, rebellions, sudden shifts in how truth is spoken. By July 5th, they are still very close, beginning to separate, but the electricity lingers. Think about that. A ceremony once outlawed, languages beaten out of children, spiritual practices driven underground. And in the sky, Mars, Uranus, and Gemini. Suppressed voices don't disappear, they build pressure. And when pressure releases, it sounds like drums. Mars Uranus is not gentle energy. But here's the nuance. In Gemini, it is not about brute force. It is about the word, the story, the reemergence of narrative that refuses erasure. This is the energy of, you tried to silence us, we are still speaking. You don't need to dramatize that. Just notice the resonance. And tomorrow, July 6th, Earth reaches aphelion, the farthest point in its orbit from the sun. Let that sink in. The planet is at its greatest distance from its star, and yet it is high summer. Fields are green, insects hum. The sun is hot on your shoulders. Distance does not equal disconnection. Even at our farthest point, warmth travels. That is physics. And it is metaphor. Ceremonies were driven into shadow. People were separated from land. Language was interrupted. And still, warmth traveled. Continuity endured. The sun does not withdraw its energy because Earth drifts slightly farther into its orbit. And devotion does not evaporate because governments declare it illegal. Aphelion reminds us connection is not erased by distance. It is maintained by rhythm. Let's look again at that Pisces moon. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. It carries the residue of everything that came before it. It is collective memory. Under a Pisces moon, grief can surface. So can compassion. The veil between present and past thins, which is why this is not a sky for spectacle. It is a sky for listening, for asking, what still lives in the field of memory? what dances even when we are not watching. The waning gibbous phase supports this beautifully. After the full moon climax, the waning gibbous is integration. You've experienced illumination. Now what will you do with it? Gratitude is not passive. Gratitude is participatory. Under this moon, gratitude becomes action, not in the loud ways of Mars, but in the steady way of repetition, devotion over time. The sun dance is repetition, season after season, year after year. The sky on July 5th mirrors that rhythm. Light waxing, light waning, planets shifting, Earth orbiting, nothing static, nothing permanent, everything maintained through motion. Now consider Jupiter, recently entered Leo. Leo governs creative expression, heart-centered leadership, visible joy. Jupiter amplifies what it touches. This suggests something subtle but important. Collective creativity is rising. Visible pride in identity is rising. Communities stepping into their own light. Jupiter in Leo says, your culture is not something to hide. Your voice is not something to dim. That pairs beautifully with the Mars-Uranus residue in Gemini. Voice, identity, expression. Not through conquest, through presence. Now add Neptune and Saturn in Aries. Neptune is dream, Saturn is structure. Aries is initiation. Dream plus discipline plus action. In Aries, this becomes, how do you build something brave without losing your idealism? Or how do you act without losing your empathy? The tension lives in this sky. It asks us to grow up spiritually, to protect what matters without turning into what harmed it. That is elder energy. That is the kind of maturity the Sundance represents. Not chaos, not spectacle, steady devotion. And finally, Chiron in Taurus. Chiron represents collective wounds and collective healing. Taurus governs land, body, worth, material stability. Chiron in Taurus says, there are wounds around land, around belonging, around value. Healing does not come from abstraction. It comes from reconnection with the physical, with soil, with body, with tangible offerings. That too mirrors the ceremony we honored tonight. Bodies in motion, feet on earth, offering through flesh and time. The sky is not commanding us to replicate anything. It is reflecting themes, memory, distance, voice, devotion, repair, continuance. The waning gibbous moon says, give thanks. Cancer says, protect the lineage. Pisces says, remember we are connected. Mars-Uranus says, truth cannot be permanently silenced. Aphelion says, warmth travels even across distance. And Earth keeps spinning. When you step outside tonight, you are not standing beneath a mythic sky. You are standing beneath a precise, astronomical choreography. Planets in motion, gravity doing its quiet work, light traveling millions of miles. There is something deeply humbling about that. Ceremonies rise and fall. Empires rise and fall. Governments ban and repeal. The orbit continues, the sun rises, the moon wanes, and somewhere under the same sky, people are still dancing. The sky does not belong to anyone, but it witnesses everything. And on July 5th, 2026, it witnesses this: a planet at its farthest distance from the star, still warmed, a moon softening into gratitude, a sun protecting memory, a sky charged with the electricity of reclaimed voice. That is the atmosphere in which this episode breathes. Not spectacle, continuance. Look up. Breathe in the same air that has circled this planet for millennia. Exhale something back. The sky is listening, so we answer, not with imitation, but with maintenance. Summer has a scent. It lives in citrus peel under your fingernails, in warm skin after long daylight, in that first exhale when the evening finally cools. There is something about summer that feels infinite while it's here. And then one morning you wake up and the air has shifted. We pretend we don't notice, but the body does. The body always notices when light begins to withdraw. Tonight, we are not making a glamour oil. We are not calling anything in. We are preserving what already exists. We are bottling warmth. This is sunshine body oil, a slow infusion of citrus peel and patience, a ritual for storing solar memory inside a jar. And for when winter arrives, and it always does, you have something real to reach for. This is not about aesthetics. This is about maintenance, because renewal isn't a one-time event. It's something you prepare for in advance. Why citrus? Citrus fruit grows in sunlight. The peel holds essential oils that evolved to protect the fruit from insects and decay. That bright scent, it is a defense system. When you inhale orange or grapefruit, your nervous system responds. Studies show citrus oils stimulate areas of the brain associated with alertness and mood regulation. They can gently increase serotonin and dopamine activity. They cue the body toward wakefulness and safety. In plain language, citrus smells like morning. It smells like hope. And in a ritual sense, citrus is condensed sunlight. The tree took light, converted it into sugar, sealed it beneath peel. We're just releasing it again. You'll need the peel of one organic orange, the peel of one organic grapefruit, jojoba oil, a clean, bone-dry glass jar with a tight-fitting lid, patience, or at least 8 to 10 weeks of it. Let's talk about that oil choice for a moment. Jojoba is technically not an oil. It's a liquid wax ester. Its molecular structure closely resembles human sebum, the oil your skin naturally produces, that makes it stable, long-lasting, and unlikely to go rancid quickly. When you are preserving light for winter, you want something steady, not volatile. Step 1. Drying is sacred. Wash your fruit thoroughly. Use a vegetable peeler to remove long ribbons of peel. Avoid the white pith. It contains moisture and bitterness. Moisture is the enemy here. Oil and water do not mix. If water remains in your peels, mold can grow. You might not see it immediately, but bacteria waits quietly. This step is not glamorous. It is foundational. Lay the peels in a single layer and dry them completely. Air dry for 2 to 3 days until they snap, or use a dehydrator at low heat, or your oven at the lowest possible temperature with the door cracked open. Let them cool fully. Drying is not just about safety, it is symbolic. You are removing excess. You are stripping the peel to its essential oils. You are refining the light. Step 2 is combining with intention. Break the dried peels into smaller pieces. Place them into your jar. Pour jojoba oil until the peels are fully submerged, leaving about an inch of space at the top. Stir gently. Release the air bubbles. Hold the jar to the light. You'll see flecks of orange suspended in gold. It looks like sunset caught in suspension. Now speak. Not dramatically, not loudly, just clearly. I preserve the light of summer for the days that forget it. Seal the jar. Label it with the date and place it somewhere that receives indirect sunlight. Not blazing heat, just warmth. Infusion is slow, and that is the point. Now, step 3 is the waiting. 8 to 10 weeks. That's how long you leave it. Every few days, pick it up and swirl it gently. Not shake, swirl. Swirling prevents stagnation. It also reminds you that preservation is participation. Watch the oil change color from pale straw to deep amber. This is chemistry. Pigments and aromatic compounds migrating into the oil. But it is also metaphor. This is how gratitude works. It deepens when revisited. It becomes richer when allowed time. You are not just making oil. You are teaching your nervous system that warmth can be stored, that joy does not have to be urgent, that care can be slow. In a culture obsessed with immediacy, this jar becomes resistance. A real quick note on safety, because we respect both magic and microbiology. If at any point your oil smells sour, sharp, or off, discard it. If you see cloudiness or sediment that looks suspicious, discard it. Do not use if mold appears. Clean tools, dry hands, dry jar. Magic does not override bacteria. It works with physics. Step 4 is straining and storing. After 8 to 10 weeks, strain the oil through cheesecloth into a clean, dry bottle. The scent should be bright, clear, alive. Store it in a cool, dark place. Properly prepared, it will keep about a year. You may add a dried calendula petal, a small citrine chip, a sunstone. These are all optional. Adornment, not requirement. The oil itself is complete. Step 5, the winter ritual. When winter comes and your mood dips and daylight feels brief, Take a few drops, rub them between your palms, press them over your heart. Inhale slowly. Let the citrus rise. Let the body remember what warmth feels like. You can apply to pulse points, wrists, temples, the back of the neck. You can use it before meditation, before journaling, before stepping outside into cold air. This is not about pretending winter doesn't exist. It is about refusing to forget summer. The philosophy of preservation comes from human beings have always needed to preserve the light. We dry herbs, we ferment vegetables, we store grain, we cure meat. Preservation is survival magic. Indigenous communities have preserved ceremony, languages have been preserved, songs have been preserved. This oil is not imitation, it is echo. It is our small domestic way of honoring continuity. We cannot join sacred rites that are not ours, nor should we. But we can practice devotion through maintenance, through repetition, through gratitude, through showing up for light when it is abundant, so that we have reserves when it is scarce. Here's a small additional ritual layer that is completely optional. On the day you strain your oil, step outside, face the sun, lift the bottle slightly. Doesn't have to be dramatic, just in acknowledgement. Say, may this light carry me through darker seasons. May my devotion be steady. May my warmth return when called. Then bring it inside. That's it. No big theatrics, just continuity. As this oil rests in your cabinet over the coming months, it becomes your portable solstice. It becomes proof that preparation is love. When snow falls, when mornings are gray, when your energy feels thin, open the jar. Summer will rise in scent. Memory will bloom in your chest. Every time you anoint yourself, you are whispering, the dance goes on through me. And in that small act, in that ordinary kitchen devotion, you participate in the oldest magic there is, maintenance. And that is where we return now, to the circle itself. The candle has burned low. The oil rests in its jar, slowly deepening. Outside, the moon is still bright, but softer now. 3/4 lit, 3/4 remembering. We've traveled far tonight, from the plains where nations still gather beneath a cottonwood spine, to the quiet orbit of this planet drifting through space, to your own kitchen where citrus peel infuses into gold. Different scales, same rhythm, continuance. Tomorrow, Earth reaches aphelion, the farthest point in its orbit from the sun. Farthest. And still, it is summer. Still, fields grow. Still, insects hum. Still, a warmth reaches us. Distance does not mean disconnection. Remember that. There may be times in your life when you feel far from your source, far from joy, far from clarity, far from community. And yet, warmth can still travel. devotion can still reach you. The dancers of the planes understood that long before we had language for orbital mechanics. They danced not because it was easy, not because it was permitted, not because it was applauded. They danced because the world continues when someone keeps the rhythm. You do not have to pierce flesh to understand sacrifice. Sometimes sacrifice looks like showing up for your own life when it would be easier to withdraw. Sometimes it looks like preserving light when you know winter will come. Sometimes it looks like telling the truth, even when silence would be safer. That is the kind of devotion this sky supports. Not dramatic, not performative, steady. Cancer Sun asks, what do you protect? Pisces Moon asks, who are you connected to, whether you admit it or not? Mars and Uranus remind us, voice returns, truth resurfaces, silence does not hold forever. And the Waning Gibbous Moon asks, what have you received, and what will you now give back? Close your eyes for a moment. Feel your pulse. That rhythm is older than language, older than colonization, older than empire, older than borders. Your heart is a drum. It has been beating since before you understood gratitude. It will beat long after this episode fades. The question is simple. What will you offer while it does? Maybe it is your steadiness. Maybe it is your art. Maybe it's your kindness. Maybe it's your refusal to let cruelty go unchallenged. Maybe it is just this. Continuing. Continuing when it would be easier to stop. That is not small. That is how worlds survive. Take one breath for the sun that rose today. One breath for the earth that carried you without asking permission. One breath for the peoples who kept dancing when dancing was forbidden. Their endurance carved a path through history that you now walk without realizing it. Honor that, not with imitation, with integrity. When you swirl your oil in the weeks ahead, when you open that jar in winter, when you step outside and feel warmth even at a distance, remember, the dance goes on. Not because it is easy, because someone continues. And you are someone. May your offerings be enough. May your rest be radiant. May warmth reach you even at your farthest point. We dance so the world continues. If tonight stirred something in you, if a story lingered, if a question followed you home, if a truth settled quietly beside you, that's the work. Quarter 3 is about stewardship, about recognizing that wisdom is not what we learn, it's what we choose to do with what we've learned. If you'd like to keep walking beside me between episodes, you can find Raven's Lorecast on Facebook, Blue Sky, TikTok, Threads, and Instagram. That's where the conversation continues. The stories expand and the circle remains open. And if you're called to go a little deeper, Patreon is waiting when the time feels right. No pressure, no obligation, just another seat closer to the fire. Until next time, take good care of what you've been given and take good care of yourself. See you next week, my weirdlings.